This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.
Well, let's get a perspective on the Suns from one of the most respected perspectives right now in town. PHNX's own Gerald Borguet, set to become a father here shortly. He's multitasking and joining us. Is this considered a day off? Are there days off as you are preparing for something even bigger than a playoff push here?
Yeah, it's very rare that I get a day off on the Suns beat, let alone now that we're preparing a nursery for an incoming son. So, no, it's we're running some errands today, but we're getting the nursery set up, put the crib together and everything. So we're making good progress. Got plenty of time to always talk Suns basketball with you, Mark.
Is a hoop in the crib, or is there any type of basketball? Like, give me an idea. Is there like a Steve Nash theme? Connie Hawkins, anything like that?
I was overruled on that one, but I will take the little Fisher-Price hoop that we're definitely going to get as soon as they're able to stand and hold the ball. So.
I'm excited for you, man. We can both be sitting in downtown doing our work, going, man, when I get home, the real job starts, and you're going to be a great dad. So appreciate the time. So let's get a father's perspective here. I mean, if you're the father, if you're in charge here, you're sitting down the Suns. What are you sitting down and telling them? Because I'm watching last night in Toronto, and I'm out of answers.
Oh, man, if I'm the father, I raised a rough child, because this is not the product that we were expecting going into the season. And it's not any one thing that I can point to. You could ask 10 different Suns fans what the biggest problem is with the Phoenix Suns. You might get 10 different answers, and probably 8 or 9 of them would be correct, to be honest with you. Like, it's everything across the board. It's leadership, it's coaching, it's, Devin Booker not having as good of a season as we're used to seeing from him. It's the center spot. It's bringing in a point guard that they didn't need in the first place. It's role players being inconsistent. It's injuries. It's really all of the above with the Suns, and I genuinely don't know how you fix it. It feels like one of those situations where Mike Budenholzer's seat might be getting hot by the end of the season, especially depending on the way that these next couple of weeks go. There's no reinforcements coming. The trade deadline is over. You can't tank because your pick is going to another team, so you're not even going to benefit from that. You do have a first rounder, but it's probably going to be number 29, number 30 in the draft. So there really is no immediate fix here. I think once the offseason arrives, you consider a change in terms of head coaching, in terms of the GM in charge. You try to trade Bradley Beal if you can find a team that he's willing to waive his no trade clause for, even if you have to attach a pick. And if you're not able to do that, they're probably going to wind up circling back to a Kevin Durant trade, which is what they did at the trade deadline. And I don't think that's the best path forward, but it might make the most sense if they're not able to move off of Beal's contract.
Playoff chances are somewhere between 5% and 1%, depending on where you look. Are you taking that bet?
No, not at this point in time, man. And it feels crazy to say that about a team that has Kevin Durant, that has Devin Booker, no matter how you feel about Bradley Beal, that has Bradley Beal. But that's just kind of the nature of where this Suns team is, and I think they have the toughest remaining schedule coming out of the All-Star break. So it's not like it's going to get any easier. We've seen them lose to teams like the Raptors, like the Hornets in recent weeks. Their only 2 wins in February so far are in overtime against the Jazz, which required a Grayson Allen buzzer-beating 3 to force OT, and the Chicago Bulls, who are bereft of any talent or direction after the trade deadline. So this is not a good Suns basketball team right now. And with the schedule ramping up, you're looking at multiple scenarios where they're probably going to get blown out by legitimate contenders, which is the level we expected them to be playing at around this time of year. So I don't have a ton of faith. If the season ended today, they would be out of the play-in, not just the playoffs, but the play-in altogether. I don't have a ton of faith that they're going to make up that ground as the schedule continues to heat up.
Is there any sort of solution defensively for this team? Because that's where it starts with me.
Yeah, they're the 26th ranked defense. They've got a decent enough offense. It's 11th. It's not as elite as we probably expected it to be, given the firepower that this team has, but it's good enough to make you competitive. The defense is what is really letting them down. I mean, you saw it against the Toronto Raptors the other night when they lost and gave up 7 consecutive threes after they had cut it to a 2-point lead. And it's not like the Raptors were running anything extravagant or just hitting these ridiculous tough shots. It's just simple pin down, simple coming off a curl and being wide open for 3, miscommunications, guys falling asleep off the ball. I don't know what the solution is for it. We knew that this team didn't have a ton of great defensive personnel. We knew the center situation would probably be a problem for them. But for me, it's baffling that they're not giving more minutes to Ryan Dunn, who was labeled by draft experts as one of the best defensive draft prospects that they'd ever seen. And he's barely getting any minutes, garbage time, just, DNP CDs, not playing in whole games. You drafted him for this reason to help bolster your defense. And his shooting leaves something to be desired, but you're good enough offensively. You need someone who's willing to do the dirty work defensively, who's willing to make multiple efforts, who can guard the point of attack. And they just don't have that guy right now. So it's kind of baffling to me that Dunn is not, he's getting phased out of the rotation right now.
Especially after the All-Star game and the performance and all of his, excitement off that. And maybe they're just giving him a chance to kind of get his feet on the ground. I did wonder that. And, I'm watching last night pregame here on Arizona's Family as they took the court. It looks like everybody likes each other. There's the handshakes. There's the smiles. I mean, that doesn't get you anywhere when you're trying to win an NBA game. But there is some genuinely good vibes there. But do they just, are we talking about maybe missing like a Jay Crowder here, somebody, like you said, to do the dirty work? Do they need sort of, a Rodman or somebody who can go in there and just kind of muck things up and kind of be the bad guy?
I think so. They need to change the pace because we've seen them change their starting lineup multiple times where they went from Bradley Beal starting to coming off the bench. Now it's Tyus Jones. They've tried multiple shakeups. They benched Yusuf Nurkic. Like it feels like something where the team likes each other. It's not that these guys hate each other or that they're miserable or whatever. It's just that they don't play well together. They don't click. And if you've ever played competitive basketball at any level, when you're on a bad team and you know that you're on a bad team, it doesn't matter how much you like the guys. You could get along with everybody great. But when it comes to putting up a fight and executing at a high enough level and responding when other teams pop you in the jaw in a game, the Suns just don't have that because I don't think there's a belief in what they're doing and the principles that they're supposed to be executing in Mike Budenholzer's scheme, whatever it is, in each other. There's not that trust and that belief that we have enough here to get it done. And I genuinely don't know how you fix it outside of, a major offseason shakeup. I think these next 2 months are kind of just going to be what they are. I don't know if there are any internal solutions at this point because you went out and added another center in Nick Richards, but Mike Budenholzer doesn't trust him enough to try and close games. And when he has bad stretches, he gets benched as a result. Maybe we'll see some Cody Martin, but even if you're playing Cody Martin and Ryan Dunn and throwing more defenders out there, it just doesn't feel like this team has it, and it starts at the very top.
Well, none of my teams clicked, so I know the feeling very well. Do you think like at some point Kevin Durant would just shut it down for the season if this continues in this direction? Short of winning 9 of 10 here, I think it's less than 1%. What does it look like month of April for Suns fans going down to the arena?
That's a great question. And I know, I don't want to speak for Kevin Durant or Devin Booker or any of those guys. I know that they want to play. And until the moment when they are officially eliminated, you cannot get back into the play-in situation because you're just too many games behind, they'll want to continue playing because that's just who they are and that's what they're about. I don't think it would look good for either one of them if they just kind of not quit, but decided, all right, well, we're done, so I might as well sit out. That just doesn't strike me as something that would be in their MO. But realistically speaking, looking forward to an off season where major changes might be coming, where the Suns might be considering trading Kevin Durant again rather than giving him a 2-year, $120-some million extension, it could be in the cards if they get officially eliminated from that race, which, man, that would be really depressing. They got eliminated from even making a top 10 placing in the West, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
I mean, do you think it's definitely Durant? Because I do think that after this year, Booker's got to be on the table at some point, and you'd have to pay him more in the long term. Could you, as you were looking through the scenarios, I'm looking through all of them. Do you trade Durant, which would make sense? It seems like there'd be a huge market for it, and the window's closing. But you could get the biggest haul for Booker. How would you attack the rebuild to try to get as relevant as quick as possible and get big games back in downtown Phoenix?
I'm probably one of the last people on this island at this point, but I still believe, based on what we saw in the playoffs a couple of years ago in Durant's first season here, when it was just Book and KD going off, I feel like if you had put the right pieces around those two, you could still build a championship caliber team out of that. I just think their vision was poorly executed. They had acquired a lot of talent, but the pieces just didn't fit together around those two. So for me, I think you try to trade Bradley Beal and attach a first round pick to him if you have to and restructure the roster around KD and Book. But realistically speaking, it's hard to find a team that A would want Bradley Beal for only one first round pick and B, he'd be willing to waive his no trade clause for. So realistically speaking, you are probably looking at a summer where you're trying to trade Kevin Durant and trying to get a package in return that puts young blue chip prospects around Book, but also kind of established talent that they can win now, maybe recoup some of your draft assets as well. And then in turn, maybe flip some of those pieces if you can for more win now pieces to make sure you can look Devin Booker in the face and say, hey, we're trying to win now. We're not just, rebuilding. You're not going to have to wait 2 or 3 years for us to be good again. Whether they're able to thread all of those needles is another question entirely. So I don't think you trade Devin Booker. I think with the way that the fan base is reacting to the front office and to Matt Ishbia in their first 2 or 3 years on the job, trading Devin Booker would kind of destroy that last thread of goodwill that you have with the fan base left. Because as much as Devin Booker has taken a step backward this season, he's still playing at a borderline all-star level. He's still the face of your franchise, and he's still young enough to where you can build around him if you do it correctly. I think Book and a lot of the players on this team just acknowledge and recognize, even if they would never admit it, that this team is not good. And I think that's been reflected in some of their performances. So I think you still build around Devin Booker, long story short, but you would get the best offer for him. That's all I'll say. But you don't trade a guy like that unless he asks out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And especially after what he's been through here. But then again, as we found at the trading deadline, anybody can get traded at any point. I'm kind of buying your theory though. Like, cause who wants to go to being irrelevant for 2 years or just kind of, Yeah, I mean, we were there for 10 years and it was awful. But I did watch Booker, and granted, it was the Utah Jazz, and it was the game winner. You needed a game winner to beat the Utah Jazz. But Booker coming downhill, driving and kicking, I that took us back to 2021, and I was like, I love watching this. I'll watch the entire game. It's beautiful. It's like a tailback trying to break through the line and then lateraling it. It was almost like rugby. And then when Booker was out against Houston, injured his back right before the All-Star break, it was KD and a bunch of young guys, and there was energy. There was life. And I'm wondering, do you think there's any chance you can get Booker and Durant playing like that, going back to when Durant got here? Do you feel like there was similar energy and it's just the pieces, like you were saying?
We've seen it not enough this season. I'll say that. Like I think you can get back to that if you put the right pieces around them and they actually buy in. And we saw it at the start of this season too. They were
right
8-1 in the first 9 games or whatever it was, and they looked like the contenders that were promised, basically. But I do think that to a certain degree, putting a point guard in the starting lineup, someone who was a defensive liability, who took the ball out of Book's hands, is a problem because Devin Booker is your best advantage creator. Like obviously Kevin Durant is your best scorer, but in terms of creating advantages and the playmaking component that comes with it, like you wanted Book to be doing what he did during that incredible playoff run he had when Durant, it was his first playoff run in the Valley. Like that was Devin Booker's best postseason that he's had individually. And it was basically, it came especially once Chris Paul went down. And it was, okay, Book, you're going to have the ball in your hands. You're going to make things happen.
Point Book, right? Was that Point Book?
Yeah, that was Point Book.
What happened? What happened to Point Book?
Well, a lot of people saw how many turnovers they were committing last year, and they blamed it on Book and the lack of a true point guard. So they went out and got a true point guard. And now we're in this situation where you're still seeing too much Bradley Beal initiating, even though Tyus Jones is now out of the starting lineup. And in the last 2 games, when they've gone to Book being the initiator, the lead initiator, that's when they've gone on these runs against the Bulls and the Raptors. So look, Book is not perfect. He's not absolved of blame in any of this, the way that this season has turned out, but they're not doing him any favors by, not letting him do what he does best now. I think you need to put him in kind of more of a James Harden hybrid type of role where he is a scorer, where he is a playmaker, and let Kevin Durant cook off of that than you are, play him off the ball and have him kind of split duties. And then you got Tyus Jones playing off the ball for whatever reason. Like, it's just a mess, and you're asking too many players to do things that they're not best suited to do.
Right. Well, that's why I think, the finger is going to point to the coach on the bench once again. And I don't know that it's any of their faults, because it's a very, very challenging situation. It was for Monty, and it was for Frank Vogel, and now it is for Mike Budenholzer. But that's the life of a coach, the life of a dad. So tell us about what you have on the scouting report here coming up, where we can find your stuff online, and then will you be grateful if for some reason this thing turns around and you're on about 4 hours sleep covering some big time basketball games here down the stretch that you can watch in Arizona's Family Sports?
Listen, man, I'll be 100% honest. The Suns are going to be doing me a favor either way, because if they turn things around, I get to cover playoff basketball. And as much as this season has been rough and the fan base is not happy watching these games, I love nothing more than watching basketball and getting to cover it for a living. So I would love to hit the road and actually cover playoff basketball again, no matter what the end result is. If they don't turn it around, my son is due in the third week of May. So if they're not playing that late, I get to be on paternity leave and not worry about missing any of their playoff basketball. So either way, I'm going to come out on top in this thing. But hopefully the Suns are able to give the fans a little bit more of an enjoyable finish to the season whenever that arrives.
All right, leave us with this, because and tell us where fans can let their thoughts. What are some of the best I guess the best opinions, perspectives, what fans want? Give us some of the best and most off the wall stuff you've heard.
Oh man, I've heard everything under the sun on Twitter. You can follow me there on at Gerald Borguet. And people do let me know their thoughts a lot of the time. My favorite one that I've been seeing a lot more this season, and I don't know if other beat writers get this or not, is that we don't ask hard enough questions, and we're not holding the team accountable, which I'm sorry to shatter the bubble. I appreciate that you guys think that much of us in the media. But Mike Budenholzer is not making his game plan based on what questions I'm asking him.
Right.
He does not care what my opinion is on whether Ryan Dunn should be playing or why Nick Richards isn't finishing. So I just wanted to share that with everybody, because we are asking the questions. We are reporting what he says back. We're doing our job in that respect. But me telling Mike Budenholzer a bunch of defensive stats about Ryan Dunn is not going to suddenly change his mind and put Ryan Dunn in the game.
I think you should bring like one of those dry erase boards, maybe drop some plays, maybe slip him some notes. I had some ideas on offense and defense. So yeah, no, I mean, and I can report that I'm there, and I've seen you ask tough questions, and I've seen you wade into the territory of people where people, the uncomfortable territory. So keep doing what you're doing, keep shooting your shot, shooter, and we look forward to the next Borguet to join us very soon. And so good luck with that, and get some sleep now.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Definitely will.
This is The Extra Point, an Arizona's Family Originals podcast, sponsored by your Phoenix Suns.